I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of a sucker for the childhood friend in anime. I know they're gonna lose, but I can't help rooting for them anyways. Here's the thing though, the childhood friend is a trap. No, not that kind of trap. Let's deconstruct this anime trope. Welcome back to Samsara Audio, a division of Samsara Diagnostics. You can subscribe to my weekly newsletter at samsara.clinic. That's www.samsara.clinic. I publish a post every Friday about a topic in religion, philosophy, or psychoanalysis. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for listening. Let's dive into the childhood friend trope, or the Osana Najimi, in anime. We all know childhood friend characters. Onodera from Nisekoi, Tsubaki from Your Lie in April, Yozora from Boku wa Tomodachi ga Sukunai, even Hanakawa Tsubasa from Monogatari. I think she's an Osana Najimi character. And the list goes on. Anime, like all popular forms of media, relies heavily on tropes, which means that viewers encounter similar character patterns repeatedly as they watch copious amounts of anime, as I have and continue to do. I've found variations of the childhood friend trope particularly fascinating, largely because I had such a figure in my own life. A girl I'd known since I was 10, and with whom I had an on and off again romantic relationship up until about sophomore year of college. So while I have an academic interest in the childhood friend trope as a way for understanding identity and desire, especially through a psychoanalytic lens, I also have a personal interest in it. And this analysis of the childhood friend trope has also served in my life as a way to better understand my own struggles, as well as think critically about how men like myself can move past their childhood friend experiences, and more importantly, what those relationships represent psychologically. Now, in order to understand the childhood friend trope, we actually have to start with the character which the Osana Najimi inevitably plays the opposite to, the new girl. We can only truly understand the childhood friend in relation to her opposite, the new girl. Let me sketch a very common anime plot for you. Boy lives a normal life, maybe has some sadness and some scars, but his life is perfectly ordinary, boring, very little prospects of success, and not going anywhere in particular. Suddenly, a new girl appears in his life out of nowhere. Through some sort of plot device, be it magical, social, or what have you, he becomes bound to her in some way. Somehow he's stuck with this girl in his everyday life now. He either initially won't like her, or he'll simply be mystified by her existence. She shakes up his daily routine, forces him outside of his comfort zone, and generally makes a mess of his life. But along the way, he begins to fall for her, and eventually he realizes that he loves her. Now, while all this is happening, typically the childhood friend of the boy will be along for the ride. She will be a part of the friend group that orbits around the protagonist, but her status as childhood friend provides her some special claim upon his attention and ongoing justification for her proximity to him. They share good memories as being children together, they know each other like the back of their hands, and they also have special privileges like access to each other's house or established routines. Like maybe they walk to and from school together. If you watch enough anime with these two tropes functioning in a narrative, you will begin to notice that the protagonist never ends up with a childhood friend. It is the childhood friend character's inexorable fate to be rejected and to have her precious crush snatched right out from under her nose by the new girl. The new girl blasts into the protagonist's humdrum world, bringing new colors and directions to his life, something which the childhood friend seems unable to do or to have done. The new girl essentially drags the protagonist forward through sheer enthusiasm and usually some unintentional transgression of social protocol. The new girl in anime strongly resembles the manic pixie girl trope exemplified by characters such as Zooey Deschanel's Summer in 500 Days of Summer. Ironically, Zoe also later starring in a television show called New Girl, a bit on the nose. She seems to have an immovable internal compass, and by setting her sights firmly on the protagonist, he encounters an unstoppable force determined to upset his ordinary routine, pulling him into her rhythms and upending his humdrum existence. So this new girl trope appears in anime again and again because the new girl exists to be a catalyst for change in the protagonist's life. She becomes the radical inbreaking of something entirely new and out of his control, a sort of X factor that, once introduced into his life, prevents his life from ever being the same again. So the new girl, in her very being, represents the pure possibility of something new, something beyond the present. She literally is the future arriving in the now. But if the new girl is the future, then the childhood friend must represent the past. She represents all of the established routines and habits which have given structure to the protagonist's life to this point. But those are precisely the structures which the inbreaking of the new girl utterly shatters and turns upside down. Those things with which the protagonist was encrusted only served to cement his life into patterns of dull repetition and the endless return of the same. Under the star of this new girl rising in his sky, he finds himself simply wandering through life directionless. Once we find these pure possibilities externalized in some sort of new power, ability, or status that the protagonist gains, the new girl may come from a magical realm, claiming that the protagonist possesses deep within him the lost spirit of some ancient warrior. She may simply be the only person who notices a particular aspect of the protagonist, thus taking a unique interest in him. These plot devices tangibly represent how she literally unlocks his potential, a potential which has lain dormant in the midst of the humdrum world which he previously inhabited, but which also paradoxically is created through her interest in him. The new girl is different because the childhood friend never unlocked these powers in the protagonist, nor did she ever introduce into his life a possibility that was ever utterly new, such that his whole world was transfigured. Ultimately, the childhood friend simply represents the old and comfortable paradigm that has to be left behind, as a radical conversion to a new paradigm opens up a new world in which the new girl invades and transforms the protagonist's life. And this, unfortunately, for all our wonderful childhood friend characters out there, is why they must not get the boy in the end. To understand this, though, I think it's interesting to look at an anime where the protagonist does end up with the childhood friend. Yes, this anime does exist. Watching Kimino Irumachi, which I'll refer to going forward as Machi, was something of a breakthrough for me in understanding the tangled emotions around the childhood friend character. I think Machi starkly reveals the danger and the snare of the childhood friend character and what she represents. And it does so by creating a narrative in which the character does choose the childhood friend as their romantic partner rather than the new girl. The case of Machi demonstrates the point in psychoanalytic theory which says that the fulfillment of our wishes is actually the most traumatic event of all, although it unveils this insight in attempting to cover it over. For those who haven't watched Machi, there will be spoilers ahead. Frankly, I think it's actually a pretty mediocre anime in terms of quality, so you're not missing out on much. I'm mainly commenting on it here because of how it illustrates some interesting mechanics which are operating under the hood of most shoujo anime. In Kimino Irumachi, the main character, Kirishima Haruto, moves from the countryside near Hiroshima to Tokyo in order to track down a girl who lived with his family for a few years when they were in high school, during which time the two fell in love. When she returned to Tokyo, she broke off all contact with him. So he finds a job as a cook part-time in Tokyo in order to find her and learn the true nature of her feelings about him. The show reveals that the two had actually met even earlier than in high school, when they were still both young children. The girl, Eba, was visiting the town's summer festival and had become separated from her parents. The young Kirishima finds her, decides to cheer her up, and takes her to a pond where they watch the fireworks together. Eba is utterly entranced, and they proceed to spend the evening together at the festival, playing games and laughing together. The show continually harkened back to this memory as a fateful moment when the two children were somehow bound together inexorably, into which they must be unswervingly faithful in their lives to come. The show brings dimension to Eba as the childhood friend trope by introducing another woman into Kirishima's life. When he moves to Tokyo, he meets a girl in his class named Mishima Asuka. She is a girl next door type who is attractive, a little bit of a tomboy, optimistic, energetic, easy to talk to, and she's forgiving. They become friends, and she falls for Kirishima quickly. They spend time together regularly, overcome some hardship together, and they even have a similar experience of adjusting to living in Tokyo with country accents, which is apparently a surprisingly big deal in Tokyo society. Asuka remains by Kirishima's side, even as his tumultuous relationship with Eba seems to wax and wane. The final episode of the series jumps ahead a year or two into the future. Asuka and Kirishima have been dating, and seem to display the outward signs of a healthy relationship. She surprises him with flowers, they cook together, they're affectionate, and he picks up an additional part-time job to save money to take her to the beach during summer break. However, when Eba suddenly reappears in Kirishima's life, she strikes him like a bolt of lightning, upending everything he thought he knew about his world to that point. He had thought he was over her and was happy with Asuka, but nonetheless, experiences afresh the flood of desire to be with Eba, and he begins to fall back into old mental habits. The fateful moment comes when Kirishima makes a trip home to visit his family during the summer break, and he does so knowing that Eba will be there. Inevitably, being in the town where they spent so much time and made memories together reignites the feelings they had for each other. Ultimately, Kirishima and Eba find themselves at the same pond where they once watched fireworks together. Kirishima makes the fateful decision to lie over the phone to Asuka about his whereabouts, only to discover that she was waiting back at his parents' house, the very place he had falsely claimed to be. When he returns to Tokyo, he ends his relationship with Asuka and meets up with Eba in order to start their new life together. The show ends the final credits with a flowery montage of Kirishima and Eba declaring their love for one another and walking arm in arm up a flight of stairs in the park, seemingly into a beautiful, fantastical future of love. And yet, something feels deeply wrong about this ending. Machi interrogates the enigma of the childhood friend by positing a childhood friend who was, at one point, a new girl. Eba is more than just a childhood friend. She is a new girl whose revolution failed to materialize radical change in Kirishima's life. A failed revolution. The moment at the pond, which Kirishima and Eba continually circle back to in their imaginations, represents a possibility which was never explored and thus remains like an unfulfilled wish. They return to it again and again like an animal licking an open wound. This fantasy serves a pathological function in each of their lives. For Kirishima, it's the lost object he's been searching for. And for Eba, it's the ultimate security which she hasn't been able to find anywhere else. These functions are complementary and codependent, ultimately serving as powerful forces of stagnation in their lives. We can observe this in the effects which they have on each other. Rather than filling them up so they can pour out love beyond the bounds of their relationship cuts them off from other people, both by encouraging them to spend inordinate amounts of time together, but also by harboring secrets and unspoken desires which can only find expression within the context of their dyad. They continually turn inwards, becoming warped and smaller versions of themselves as they each desperately search for ultimate satisfaction. They declare that they have no need of others as long as they have each other, and then they lie and betray the people who have cared for them most. In Machi, we simultaneously see the missing component of the new girl and the truth of the childhood friend. In the majority of anime with a new girl character, we never get to see how the protagonist's life with the new girl eventually also becomes normalized into a set of routines. We only ever see him in the midst of the topsy-turvy, the inbreaking of the event. But how does the event get translated into a real life that can be lived? Something that they can build together? Shows rarely answer this question. But I think that Machi holds out this possibility in the character of Asuka. It does this by showing her inbreaking not as a cataclysmic event that turns Kirishima's world upside down, but by introducing her into his life as the possibility of a healthy relationship where two people can live life together, sacrifice for one another, and actually build something new. She is the only stable and sane thing in his entire life, and therein lies her truly cataclysmic nature. She quietly promises the true happiness of real love in a real life. She is possibility speaking in his life, but she is too quiet for him to hear over the roar of his fantasies. However, all that Eba can promise Kirishima is an eternal return of the same. She is the illusion of possibility, perpetually abstract, not concrete like Asuka. She could only promise to endlessly repeat what they have already experienced together. They have nothing new to offer each other. They can only perpetuate the cycles they've always known, and these cycles are destructive. They actively prevent Kirishima from seeing the world differently, from finding purpose beyond himself, or from finding a romantic relationship that is built on love and self-sacrifice, not mutual need and a spirit of martyrdom. Here we see the truth of the childhood friend. By choosing Eba over Asuka, Kirishima rejects the possibility of something truly new and real embodied in his relationship with Asuka. Instead, he opts for that which is familiar, but wildly painful and destructive. He rejects Asuka because her radical inbreaking came disguised as a perfectly normal life with a perfectly normal person who loves him. To the jaundiced eye, all appears yellow, and so too to Kirishima's eye, tinted by years of suffering and love sickness. He can't see true love when it lives and breathes right in front of him in the form of a real person named Asuka. The woman I loved when I was younger represented for me not the possibility of something good or healthy or new. Rather, I've grown to see that she represented for me a symbol of love which remains primordially lost. My attachment to her rehearsed nothing more than an attachment to the impossibility of true love. She was destructive to me. I ignored people who told me this. And her own set of pathological reasons were destroying her too. Yet I circled back to her inexorably, drawn by a force which I felt powerless to resist. I understand now that it was something in me, a void, which propelled me towards her time and again. And ultimately, what we were experiencing was a codependency in which our personal pathologies propelled us on intersecting trajectories. If I were writing Machi, I would have made the few days that Kirishima and Eba spent together in their old hometown bring a final closure to their relationship. They would have replayed those old memories, treasured them, and then made their peace with them. They would have gone their separate ways. Kirishima back to Asuka, renewed in his commitment to her and full of the possibility that his life with her holds. Eba would have left with a new sense that she doesn't need to cling to Kirishima in her heart anymore, but that she can forge her own path, and perhaps find someone along the way who will love her and journey alongside her. To find life, health, and joy, they should have valued those precious memories just as they were, rather than believing that those memories demanded a repetition in the present. Only by acknowledging the wound for what it was could they then set their faces to the future in search of a new abundance of life. Thank you for this. I really appreciate you being willing to listen. I think that anime provides a lot of opportunities for us to be able to look at identity and desire, how we position ourselves vis-a-vis others, and what drives us forward. I hope that you will like this video. I hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please stay tuned for more psychoanalytic readings of anime. Have a great day, everyone.